We need to talk about Cybele. There is a recent video by Academy of Ideas, their channel is absolutely fantastic, by the way. It's linked below, and I would recommend giving it a watch after you watch this one. And they pointed out something that I myself and most of us have been getting completely wrong. So many of us have been talking about the Saturnian cult that seems to be in charge of everything. We've been talking about the black cubes, about the baby murder, and we've been wrong. This is not a Saturnian cult. It is a Cybelean cult. So who is Cybele, anyway? Well, we're really not sure, actually. The cult of Cybele was adopted by the Romans. It comes from the east, from Anatolia, from the Phrygians. Phrygians whom I normally hold in great respect. She's a mother goddess, but a dark version of the mother goddess. Rhea, Gaia, Demeter. The Romans equated her to this in some manner. And yet she was different. In fact, that card I keep pulling, the Queen of Wands, might have a lot of similarities to her. She holds a cornucopia. She is flanked by two cats. And her consort is the young Adonis, or Attis, who was born at midnight on the 24th of December and was died, according to one story, when he was gored by not the bull, the boar of Mars. According to another story, he emasculated himself under the pine tree and was protected by the Dark Mother, thus attaining eternal life. And her priests, the Galli, would often castrate themselves at the high part of her cultic festival. Now, I said this was adopted, this religion, this mystery cult was adopted by the Romans. It was welcomed by the Romans, even though the Greeks always looked squint-eyed at it. In 205 BC, at the height of the Second Punic War. And it was recommended by the Cybelean Oracle, different Cybele. Also a crazy woman, but different. Which is very interesting because they were in the depths of a conflict with an enemy that was worshipping Baal Haman, who demanded the sacrifice of children. And the Cybelean Oracle said that if you adopt the cult of Cybele, who doesn't murder babies but just castrates them, you will be victorious. and they were. That Second Punic War is very much like our Second World War. It was a war between good and evil. It was a war of existential importance, of deep blood vendettas, of righteous anger on both sides. It was Rome's greatest moment, and it was the beginning of Rome's end. It was very much our World War II. History rhymes. But what does that mean? What is a dark goddess? A dark mother goddess, a mother earth, fertility goddess, a mother that eats her own children. And what is Saturn? Who is this harsh god? Saturn, Kronos, Father Time, the Grim Reaper, the one that rules over the Golden Age. Apsu in the Babylonian tradition. With his bride Tiamat. Slain by the god Marduk to free his brothers and sisters, so that Tiamat begat monsters to get revenge upon the junior gods, only to herself lose and be slain and be cut up into the pieces that make the earth. The dark, vengeful earth, the grave, the cave, that which would reclaim and destroy masculine virility. This is an archetype that is just, it's part of reality. What do you want from me? Let's take a lighter note for a second. There was a show when I was a young man called Mad TV, based upon Mad Magazine. And there's this one skit they had called Cabana Talk, where this old lady, far past her prime, who was obnoxiously sexual, would interview guests on her failing public access show. And her two co-hosts were Pool Boy and the musician. The musician, an obvious homosexual with an Adonis body, and Pool Boy, a daft blonde fool who would dance for her entertainment. I'm going to try and find a link to one of the clips from that show, and I'm going to put it down below. That's a lighthearted take on the Dark Mother, on Cybele. Joan Crawford would be a less amusing take, Mother Dearest. And this is a topic, and honestly it's something I should have figured out long ago, because I'm a big fan of Joshua Slocum. It's a frequent topic, the normalization of cluster B behavior. Narcissist, borderline, histrionic, psychopath, particularly the normalization of the feminine instantiations of these, the histrionic and the borderline. That is Cybele. And there is a mass psychosis of women adopting, women and men, women adopting this dark deity. So what does this mean? What does this mean for the current year? Let's go back to the 19th century. Nietzsche pointed out that God is dead and we have killed him. That we have stopped being genuine Christians. We don't really have faith anymore. We're just going through the motions. Those traits of Adonis that I mentioned earlier, because he is a dying and resurrected God. He is a redeeming God. He's a prettier, less dangerous form of Mithras, and far less comforting than Christ and Mother Mary. There's similar elements there, right down to the date. September 24th, September 25th, attributed to be his date of birth. There's these common elements, these echoes. And not only did we abandon true faith in God and Christ, but by the 19th century, the respect for the feminine principle, the veneration of Mary, was long gone. And if you won't honor the good mother, well, that sentence completes itself. Where Dostoevsky tried to remind us what Christianity was, that it's not ignoring horrors. It's embracing them and bringing them into the fold. It's sublimating horror into holiness. Nietzsche didn't think that was possible. But he hoped that though we might not have Christ anymore, though we might not have Apollo, might we at least have Dionysius? Might we have Mithras? But maybe Wagner had too much sway. Wagner, the alpha male. Nietzsche, the gamma male. I hate to say it, I love Nietzsche. But Wagner is the one that swayed the crowds, that controlled the ladies. And what he brought about with the ring cycle. Or Franz von Stuck with his painting, The Wild Chase. Look this one up. The Wild Chase by Franz von Stuck. It was painted the same year that Hitler was born. And Hitler absolutely loved it. It's a picture of Odin with his undead legions driving this chaotic, frenetic energy. Wotan, the Germanic god of self-sacrifice for power. The god that hung from a tree dead for 3 days and then rose again from the dead with the knowledge of the underworld. Once again, these similarities to Christ. It wasn't Dionysius, who himself was a terrifying god of mad genius. So was Christ. Why do you think the Romans crucified him? Why do you think Mars sent his boar to gut Adonis? Rome's primary god being Mars, of course. These crazy mad gods that flip reality upside down and sometimes bring horror, but also bring inspiration. That wasn't the god that took over the European psyche. It was Wotan, god of the wild hunt and sacrifice. chaos and war. Hitler putting his generals into competition with one another instead of having an organized say. Instead of Apollo and Athena being the pagan deities guiding the Germanic war machine, Wotan. Endless competition for supremacy in the wild state of nature, and sacrifice for wisdom, whether you like it or not. Saturn was the god of the baby boomers. Saturn, Kronos. The deep irony. The forever young generation. The label of their generation has become synonymous with old person. The deep, incredible irony of that. They enjoyed the golden age when Wotan fell away. When Wotan's wild chase destroyed everything, it was the American boomers that were there to pick up the pieces and profit off of them. Saturn is a harsh god. The Romans recognize Saturn in many other cultures as well. Baal-Hamon, as I mentioned, which was the god of the Carthaginians, their opponents during the Punic Wars. The ones that literally sacrificed babies to him. They equated Yahweh, the Jewish god, with Saturn. Although the Jewish Old Testament did say that sacrificing babies to Baal-Hamon was a perversion. Yahweh only wanted the foreskin. Once again, this castration thing going on. Eating the young, castrating virility. Did you know that expensive skin products, the sort that average women can afford, just the Hollywood idols worshipped by the masses, did you know that they advertise that they contain ground up foreskins in them? But we're getting ahead of ourselves, aren't we? We're getting ahead of ourselves. Saturn rules over the Golden Age. But it doesn't last forever. There's a large cult of Saturn in Rome. Saturn was one of the primary deities. But the deity was Mars. And as I mentioned, Yahweh, Baal, Kronos, these are all different names of Saturn. Saturn, in the positive sense, is still a very brutal god. Laws, limitations, the harvest, the golden age. This is the reason that you see the black cube of Saturn out front of so many banks and investment firms. Although it can be a little bit disturbing to realize that the harvest season that they're looking forward to is harvesting the interest off of you. You are the grain being harvested. But while this cult of Saturn still has many outholds, many outposts in the current year, the baby boomers burned it all up. Cult of Saturn fell out of power back in the 90s. So who was Saturn's bride? Well, the first two created deities were Saturn and the Earth. Gaia, Demeter, Rhea. Those are some of her positive names. Mary is another one of them. Or at the very minimum, it rhymes. But there's also the darker names, Tiamat and Cybele. And let's not forget Ops. Ops, the root Latin word for opulence. The richness of the earth. The vengeful, spiteful, controlling richness of the earth. What we are presently witnessing is a mass formation based upon the deity, the meme complex of Dark Demeter, of Cybele. Here's one example. Why is abortion such an endless topic in political conversations? Why is this such a sacred value? And it's not because Baal Haman. It's not because Saturn wants to eat his children. Saturn already ate his children. We are the children that got eaten alive by the boomer Saturn. In all species, all mammalian species, under times of high stress, the females will kill their own young. This is just triage. There's one story, I don't know if this is true or not, but supposedly a bunch of Jews running away from the Nazis, and one had a baby that wouldn't stop crying, and so she smothered the baby to death so the Nazis wouldn't find them. Probably apocryphal, but who the hell knows? Those were some pretty crazy times. Might be real. That's normal. If a woman gets raped and she wants to murder the rape baby, that's normal. If a woman marries a man, but the man gets defeated, he gets zeroed out, and she wants to abandon him and his children, that may not be moral, but it is normal. That's the world of abortions being safe, legal, and rare, which is not the world we're in. The world we're in, abortion is celebrated as a sacrament. Women don't want to abort the babies of guys that raped them. They want to abort the babies of guys they enthusiastically had sex with. That's not about healthcare. That is a civilian religious rite. So what the hell do we do about this? Well, the first two gods, as I said earlier, gods, titans. Are we talking about the 12 or the 7? That's a topic I'm going to have to explore in a later video, not tonight. The first two gods were Saturn and Gaia. Time, space, limitation, rules, and the fecundity, potentiality in matter, in pattern, in creation. But a universe with nothing but Saturn and Earth was a very dark, brutal reality. And it wasn't until Sol Invictus came, the masculine solar energy of creation, that Saturn was put in his proper place. The sun, which resurrects every year, spends 3 days or 3 months in darkness, and then returns to fertilize the earth, and pushes grandfather Saturn into the distance. He still has authority, but not constant punishment. The answer is not Martian energy. The Martian energy of aggressive masculinity, that put out by PUAs to, if we have women, if we have dark women, pursue them aggressively, use them, discard them. No, that's not the answer. That is Adonis. Mars, Adonis, and even Christ, who was a very Martian figure himself. I mean, who else would the boar of Mars gore but Mars? No, we need solar energy. We need the masculine light of reason, intelligence, fecundity. We need to resist these castration cults. We need to reawaken the positive feminine in our women folk. There have been a lot of people criticizing, with all the violence happening in the West right now to women, to children, why aren't the men standing up? And the short answer is that every guy that stood up got locked behind bars, and thus could no longer provide for his family. Keep that Martian energy in you, brothers. You're going to need it at some point. But no, we don't need Martian energy. We need Apollonian energy. We need solar energy. We need frank truth, reason, bluntness, strategy, and music. We need Sol Invictus right now. We need men who have faith in God. We need men that can see the beauty of women and cherish that and fertilize that. Not men who attack that. The way you defeat Cybele is to break from the Dark Mother. Refuse to be her galley, her castrati. Do not be the weak man, but be the independent man. Be the Adonis who grows up. That's how we overcome this madness. Carpe Futurum, Sol Invictus. Aurini, out.